Hey everyone, in this episode we have a guest on by the name of Jeremy. Jeremy has a heck of a story, and if you ever thought that having a geographical change is in fact gonna help you get sober, well, you may find this episode a little bit interesting, and we advocate for geographical changes all the time, but under certain circumstances. We get a lot into about fitness and how it can impact your sobriety, and Jeremy just overall has a heck of a story. He has 7 years of continuous sobriety now. We talk a lot about his spiritual life, his fitness life, how he helps other people, and how it has impacted his sobriety as a whole. So I know you'll get a lot out of this. Enjoy this. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And we also have a gentleman by the name of Jeremy.
Hey, fellas.
How you doing, Jeremy?
Doing well. By yourself?
Good, good, good. First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, or whichever one that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always email us info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, it's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And I do have something to say. There is somebody out there, and this person just left a comment on one of the YouTube videos. I believe you're from Australia. I did get your email, and yes, I am going to be responding to you. So bear with me. My apologies, Ben.
Australia, that's far, dude. That's down under.
Yeah.
In the whole recovery world, we have to right our wrongs.
Yes,
and
sir.
this person sent an email, and I believe sent a follow-up email. And in the day-to-day, we get a lot of emails, not only from the podcast, but from, just our work stuff, our day-to-day work stuff. What are you smirking about?
I guess I got to finally buckle down and get that password from you.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. Let me sign into my 5th email I got every morning.
I'm a one-man show over here. All Ben has to do is sit here talking to a microphone, and that's it. So, but I will get back to you. Rest assured, I do promise you. And for anybody else, if you have any questions, you can always email us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message.
Yep. That's it right there.
Ben's missing. We used to have this sign.
I went to look at it, dude. I'm like,
we used to have this sign back here that says mess to message, and like a neon blue or whatever.
I love that.
And I took it down and put up my mahi. The water buffaloes over here, So
it's a good vibe in here.
Yeah, it's nice. What do you think of my wood panel wall?
It's a nice backdrop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
That's
nice.
good. Really ties the room together.
Yeah.
he's going to have that ripped down next week.
No, that is not going anywhere.
Yeah, right, dude.
There's not a shot. Those are from Wood Veneer Hub. That wall right there, just those panels alone was like $1,200.
Yeah, it's staying up.
Is that a subsidiary of Herman Miller?
No, but you did get it right. Herman
Yes.
Miller. Yeah. Herman Miller. That I like Herman Miller furniture, but no, Ben, come on. Relax.
All
right, Jeremy. Thanks for coming on, man. So I'll do a brief introduction of as best I can, because we don't really know each other that well. Myself and Ben, our good friend Josh Gamatoni, was at lunch. Where were we? Okeechobee Steakhouse. And we were walking out, and here comes Jeremy walking in, and Josh and Jeremy hug, and they're like, "Hey, bro, blah, blah, blah." And I'm just standing there like, "Oh, cool. They know each other."
Tom's like, I want a hug too.
Nah, I'm not a hugger. But so actually Josh Gam made the introduction, and come to find out, and the recovery world is so small down here. It's so big, but so small.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Turns out we know a lot of the same people.
Yep.
And so we set this up a few weeks ago, and so here we are.
Yeah. Honored to be here.
Yeah. So let's just get right into it. Talk a little bit about, and I like to share this. A lot of our listener base is families and loved ones that are dealing with somebody like us. I would venture to say 60 to 70% of our listener base is that. So I don't know. Not that changes how you speak or anything. I just like to tell people that. So, just talk a little bit about your upbringing, where you grew up, how old you are, stuff like that. We'll go from there.
All right. Yeah. So I'm from Northwest Indiana, about 45-ish minutes south of Chicago. I'm 36 years old now. I got sober when I was 29, September 27th of 2016. Nothing like too crazy notable as far as my like upbringing goes. Very early on, I took a liking to athletics. I think in a lot of ways that kind of kept me between the lines. I started drinking and smoking pretty young. I was like 13, but like outward appearances wise, you would never really know too much, especially as I got into high school. We, like my friends and I, we all partied together actually, but we also excelled in athletics. All the teams that we were on were pretty good. So all of the trouble that we would get in or like anything that they would hear about us kind of got swept under the rug. And it also kind of, in a lot of ways, like allowed me to not really recognize like what I was getting myself into or what I was up against as far as addiction or alcoholism. I didn't even know anything about addiction or alcoholism until way after high school. I was kind of just like a recreational user for the most part. I mean, I was a daily, I say recreational, but I was daily. We would smoke before school, take Vicodin or Adderall or Xanax during school. And then, this is even during seasons and then, kind of whatever at night. But I was able to kind of like manage. I did get arrested my senior year for a minor consumption. But, like another part of my story is like people bailing me out of all the jams that I would get into. Like an example would be I went to school on a Monday late. That's like another thing. I used to go to school late like every day. I was really only went to school to play sports. And I went to school late one day per usual. And they finally pulled me into the office, and they were always super nice to me. But she presented me this paperwork saying that I had been like truant or late to school like 47 days. And she made me sign this thing saying that if I was late one more time that I was going to get expelled. That night, I went to a party for one of my buddies that had already graduated, and I got arrested. Missed school the next day.
Oh, but you weren't late.
But I wasn't late. Not only was I not late, but they had, I don't know exactly who it was. I think it was my assistant principal and even our school cop got involved and were able to get my bail reduced a bit. And I was able to even come back to school the next day. So that I kind of like internalized that as like I can do no wrong and like I'm invincible. And I just, it didn't stop me from doing anything. Kept using and doing my thing per usual and carried on. That's just like one example of.
You had a lot of enablers.
Correct.
Like.
Yeah.
What sports were you playing?
I played basketball, baseball, and football. And then I kind of just narrowed it down to basketball and football. Yeah.
And so they let you graduate?
Yes, barely.
Yeah. Dude, me too, man. I was the same way. We graduated. How many people were in your graduating class?
I think there was like, a little over 400, between 400 and 600. I want to say we had 1,600 in our school at the time. It's since gotten a lot bigger, but
wow,
that's a pretty big school.
That is big. We had just about 100 people in our graduating class.
Yeah,
and it was one of those things where I graduated barely. Same thing too. I ended up in front of the guidance counselor and the principal and all kind of crap. Actually, I was on my way the next day. I don't know if I've ever shared this story. I was going to an archery competition in Harrisburg, a states competition. I would go every year to shoot indoor. And I was at Walmart. I skipped school and was at Walmart with a couple friends of mine getting some things, to go, because the next day we were going to Harrisburg to shoot this competition. And they called me, and I went to the school, and they had all this stuff laid out, like on this desk. And they were like, you've been gone this many days. You weren't here. You were late this many days. And this is a funny story. I'm dating myself and ourselves, but Did you guys ever take in school like typing classes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever take typing classes in school on a typewriter?
No.
We did for some I don't know why or how, but this is how manipulative I was. So they gave us our report cards every, I don't know how do they do that? Semesters, I suppose.
Yeah.
You get 4 a year. And so what I would do is I would take the report card that they gave us, and for whatever reason, they thought that we'd be responsible enough to take them home. Well, I would get the report card and I would go into typing class and I would put the report card in the typewriter and I would white out all the D's and the F's, which is like all of them.
Right.
And, line it perfectly and then put like B's and C's and everything and change the GPA average and yada, yada, yada. And then I would Xerox it. I would make a copy of it and take that home. And then I would tell my dad, they want to keep the originals. You'll get all the originals at the end of the year.
Nice.
And so all this shit was found out whenever I was at school.
That's how crafty we get, right?
Yeah, dude. But they ended up letting me graduate. And that stuff didn't even happen my senior year. It happened my 10th grade year. And then 11th and 12th, I just barely hung on. So.
Yeah.
But managed to graduate. Anyways, enough about me. That was a good story, though, wasn't it, Ben?
Interesting.
Yeah. So what happened after you graduated?
Well, I ended up, so I had a few small opportunities to go away to school for sports. But I met a girl my senior year and ended up foregoing any type of college opportunities and stayed home in my hometown. And she was a bit older than me. We stayed together for like 2 years, but as soon as she turned 21 and started going to the bars, she dropped me like a bad habit. So then I was just like in my hometown with no purpose, no nothing. All I was ever really good at throughout my life was sports and partying. And now sports were gone. So I kind of just floundered around and partied. And that's really when it started to escalate into like harder use. I started selling a lot of different stuff and kind of just succumbed to that whole lifestyle.
So from 20, graduate high school to 29, I mean, basically, we've all heard the story.
Yeah.
Just drug use, alcoholism, partying. Were you working? What'd you do to make money?
Well, I sold a lot of different things. We don't really got to get into all that. My dad would go out of his way to try to get me plugged in. He's like an insurance adjuster, so he was plugged in with a lot of body shops and collision centers.
Okay.
So he would get me jobs as like a porter, and I would work my way up to parts manager, and then I started doing a little estimating, but I never really enjoyed it that much.
Right.
And I was using, and my using was escalating, so I would show up to work late and not show sometimes, or just not be there, and cut out early, just all the things that don't add up to being a good employee.
Right.
So I would get let go or just stop going or any of the above.
So take us to 29.
Man, so tons of geographical changes throughout those years. My family would try to move me around to get me out of whatever situation I was in. And, what I was, once a good timer, fun user, surrounded by people. And it was middle of September, probably the 20th or something like that, or near there. It was just me in the basement of this old woman's house that I had finagled my way into. I was in Nashville, Tennessee. It was like the fourth different city that I had been in. And I was out of money. This was a Wednesday. I hadn't shown up to work Monday or Tuesday. My phone had been shut off. And I was just laying in this basement in a bit of a psychosis. I ultimately became an IV heroin and cocaine user. So I was in kind of a deep psychosis. I hadn't been taking care of myself at all, not really sleeping or bathing or any of that stuff, eating. So I was in pretty rough shape. And I was just laying there, and the only two thoughts that I had was I was going to kill myself, or I was going to go to the nearest bank and wait for someone to grab money out of the ATM and rob them. So I was laying there just sick as a dog, going back and forth between those two thoughts. And all of a sudden there was a knock at the door. And in my sick head, I thought it was the cops that were on to me somehow, like reading my mind, thinking that I was going to go rob somebody or harm myself. So I was like,
they beat me. They got me before I could even.
Yeah, it was like Minority Report. But fucking, I didn't answer it. I was like petrified. I laid there for a bit longer, probably about an hour, and there was another knock, and I kind of just threw up my hands. I was like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I opened the door, and it was my uncle, who is in long-term recovery. He's got some, I think, probably, I don't know, maybe 12 or 13 years at this point. He's kind of further down the path than I. And he just asked me if I was done. And in that moment, I was just like, yeah.
Did he live in Nashville?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of skipped over, my initial treatment experiences. He worked at a facility in Nashville, Tennessee. He got me scholarshiped in there. And, I learned a few things, but I had some reservations. I thought that I could at least like smoke weed and drink alcohol like a normal person. And, come to find out that I tried to do that, and it led me right back to, shooting dope.
You went, did you go to treatment? When he got you scholarshiped into this place in Nashville, was that your first treatment?
Second, technically. I had went after an overdose like a year and a half prior, but as soon as I was like physically capable of leaving, I AMA'd and used. I got picked up.
So you were there, what?
Like 5 days.
Yeah. I mean, that I wouldn't even constitute that as treatment.
Yeah. And I wasn't listening to a single thing.
That was an overnight stay at the hospital.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, I didn't have any choice in the matter. They literally took me from the hospital to treatment, and I was just like, all right. As soon as I had some I went into respiratory failure a few times from all my use. So after that particular time, I was in like pretty rough shape. I couldn't breathe very well. So I kind of used those days to like get my breathing capacity up to where I could at least shuffle around without having like wheezing or panic attacks and stuff like that. But as soon as I was able to walk my way out of there, I packed my bags and left.
What was the respiratory? How's that? What? Were you smoking cigarettes? Or?
Oh, yeah. And at that time, I was sniffing everything.
Oh, okay.
And I'd been using so consistently for so long that the doctors and stuff were saying that my like organs and everything were starting to fail, or just like they weren't working at like a normal capacity.
Lungs included.
Yeah.
Yikes. Ben, he sounds like you.
Yep, dude. 2 peas in a pod.
Yeah. And, I didn't... It was like winter time, and I'm from the Chicagoland area, so anytime I would go to the hospital and they would tell me like this is legitimate drug-induced pneumonia or something like that, I'm like, no, it's winter time in Chicagoland. Like, it's definitely just from the cold. And they're like, no. I'm like,
what's
whatever.
Chicagoland? What is that?
That's just like a term we use up there. I guess.
Is there?
Yeah.
I've never heard that. Have you heard that?
No, Chirac.
Chirac for sure.
What's that?
Chicago is one of the most dangerous cities in the U.S.
A lot of shooting.
So, like Iraq, they call it Chirac.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I never heard that.
Yeah,
They call I'm
something
from
else.
Indiana, but like we're so close to Chicago that they even kind of consider us a suburb of Chicago, even though we're not even in Illinois. And that kind of general vicinity is sometimes called the Chicagoland area.
I have family in Chicago.
Yeah.
I heard it's a really beautiful, like, good, nice city.
My 2 cousins from there passed away, drug overdoses.
Yeah, it's kind of rough. But summertime Chicago, in my opinion, just slightly biased, is one of the best cities in the country.
So I was in Chicago. My buddy that I went to high school with joined the Navy. And he went to boot camp. And after he graduated boot camp, they had like this ceremony in Chicago. That was the only time I been to Chicago, and it was February. And I remember... It was so damn cold.
Yeah, it was so cold.
It was like, you know, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, but this was like a different type
on
of
the
cold.
lake.
Yeah, the lake effect,
Like,
the wind chill, it gets
cuts
unbelievable,
through you.
dude. Yeah, it gets crazy.
Dude, and that was it. I was probably 18 years old.
And not for nothing, like that weather. So we get that type of weather. I mean, I was just back up there a few days ago. My little brother actually graduated from the police academy, so they had a ceremony.
Oh, cool.
It's super rad. But like from really, end of November through March, even sometimes into April, it's like that cold, dreary, just like crappy weather. And like I think seasonal depression would kind of play a role as far as just like keeping you isolated. There's not really much else to do outside of drinking or using, at least. That's what I would tell myself. It would just make it more challenging to like enjoy life.
Right.
It's hard too when you're in the depths of it, like especially as like an IV drug user, stuff along those lines, like in that culture there.
Yeah.
Chicago, because I was in Minneapolis a lot, and Minneapolis is like a mini Chicago.
Right.
Everybody from North Minneapolis is from Chicago.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing. Like you get so enveloped in that drug culture that you think nothing else exists. It becomes the norm, and you get sucked into it for sure. It's hard to get out of, man. I'm a firm like geographical change is very helpful in so many situations, especially when you're in a city like that, dude.
You know, I've often wondered how homeless people can be homeless in areas like that when you don't have any shelter. Or do you know the answer to that?
No, I mean, I had a few bouts of like not necessarily homelessness. I lived out of my car for a while, but even that was like enough shelter to kind of protect you from the elements.
Wind,
you know what I mean? The wind and the snow and the rain.
Yeah. Ben, were you ever homeless in Minnesota or wherever you were from?
No, I struggled to find places to sleep, but I was never like outside.
Yeah, I don't know.
See, up there was this, at least the people I surrounded myself with, there was always homes that needed remodeled. And somehow these people I hung out, these meth heads, they would work out these deals with these people, these property owners. Like they would drop off some paint buckets and stuff and say, hey, you can sleep in this home that there's no plumbing, no electric, or anything. As long as you paint something, maybe fix something once in a while.
Yeah.
You can stay here, dude. Yeah, that was the thing.
Jackpot in those situations.
Yeah, I used to stay with this dude Rick all the time. Poor Rick, man. He was the nicest dude. Like he was probably 55 years old, so deep. When I would show up to the house, like I was like a guest of honor. It was the strangest thing. He'd like bust out ramen noodles and like saute them in soy sauce, like like it was some gourmet meal, and he'd be all excited. And he's like, "You ready to get on with the day, man? Let's go pick up." And dude, that's what I'm saying. There's like this culture about it up there that's you get sucked into that city life, dude.
And it's just like, and you know, there's an element of this in recovery too, but like the vibe attracts your tribe type of thing. You know what I mean? Like anywhere that I went, so I did all the geographical changes. I went from Chicago to Arizona, back home, and then out to Seattle. But I was just always still on that same like vibe of like, I'm going to get high. So it was only a matter of time before I would kind of gravitate towards people that gave off the same kind of vibes that I was. And next thing you know, no matter where I was at, I would find what I was looking for and end up on the same BS as I was on anywhere else.
So let me ask you this. Were you going to ask something?
Yeah, I just never really thought it through, I guess, to this extent. But the way he's explaining it, this is the only time in my life I ever stayed sober. And I think this is the one time where like I literally did not go around anybody that I used with. You know, we go to treatment, stuff like that, and we like we go back to our home. Oh, I'm going to hook up with my old buddies, and you know, or I got this one best friend. He's trying to be sober too, so it'll be okay. Like it never works out, dude.
Yeah.
This one time is the only time I literally went around no one that I associated with previously, and it's the only time I stayed sober.
Jeremy, what I wanted to ask you was what made you go to Arizona and then Seattle? Like, were you trying to get sober when you...
No, I had everywhere that I went, I would just burn it to the ground. So I was living with some buddies. That my dad got me hooked up with this job, and the dad owned a collision center franchise. They had like 20 locations throughout Illinois.
Got it.
And he had sons that were my age.
Yeah.
And they all lived in this nice house in the suburb of Chicago, like Naperville area.
Yeah.
And I was living with them, but like, you know, it's only a matter of time for me to just
screw it all up.
So I literally, some of my buddies were they were driving out to Arizona. They were going to live there. And
just on a whim.
They had plans. Yeah, I was like the worst out of all my friends.
Yeah.
You know, everyone had their own little things going on, but I was like the only full-blown real deal drug addict. But I knew that they were going out there. My shit was hitting the fan at this house that I was living in. I was about to get kicked out. So literally in the middle of the night, I packed my shit into my Jeep, met my boys on the highway, and we drove out to Arizona. I didn't even tell my roommates, I didn't tell my family, I didn't tell anybody. Just made the drive out to Arizona with just thought in my mind that I was going to start fresh out there.
How long were you in Arizona?
like a year and a half.
Oh, okay. So you made a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I made it, but that ended with me getting in trouble with the DEA out there.
Damn.
I started running weed for like some cartel.
I'm like waiting
people.
for the hope here. Well, I know it happened in Nashville, but what made you go from then Arizona to Seattle?
Well, because this is along the same lines I want to ask. Something you said you're in your mind, you're just going to start fresh. Mm-hmm. How long did it take, or did you not get fresh at all?
No, I mean, to me, like starting fresh would be at that. I just didn't have any awareness. So it'd just be like a new environment. Oh, I'll go hike and like the mountains are nice. The weather's better. Something is just going to shake out for me. Meanwhile, I'm still smoking every day. You know, I wasn't an IV user yet then, but I was still popping pills every chance that I could get. So I was never saving any money. Always just trying to get over on people, just like a bare minimum leech of a human. You know what I mean? And that would only go so far until I would burn one too many bridges. And then, you know, the Arizona one shook out to where I was trying to make quick money. So I was like running weed for some dude that was involved with the cartel. And we went on this run and we were meeting with people that had already gotten busted. So we met them at this Home Depot, did this little exchange, showed them what we had, blah, blah, blah. Like it's not, the details aren't important, but every single car in the Home Depot was the DEA. So as soon as we went to pull off, they just swarmed us. And, yeah, that was a wild story.
This is a lot like my story.
We had guns on us and shit, and
then you're like, oh man, I'm gonna go to Seattle.
So yeah, I ended up not getting arrested that day. They made me walk home. They seized my Jeep.
This is my story.
Yeah, it was like it was like September 9th because I remember them telling me like you're about to spend your next 10 years in prison. They had me in this minivan that was all mic'd up, you know, taking my deposition or whatever they call that shit, just like asking me questions. And it just so happened that it checked out with me and the two guys that I was with. They thought that I was like some like white boy kingpin doing major moves out there. And they've come to realize I was just like some junkie idiot that these dudes were taking advantage of, letting them use my car and shit like that to make these moves. So they're like, all right, let this idiot go. And they seized my Jeep and made me walk home.
You never got your Jeep back?
They actually, so funny story, they ended up calling my dad. He flew out there. They met him at the airport and then made him drive my Jeep back and strongly suggested to him that I leave Arizona immediately because they thought that I might be in danger because of the nature of the people that I was kind of dealing with.
Which goes back to your enabling thing at the beginning.
Correct. So no jail time, no real anything, slap on the wrist. And that's why I ended up going back home, continued using. My sister had taken a nursing job. She was a travel nurse for some time out in Seattle. I had overdosed a few times, and she was like, why don't you come out here, try to start fresh?
Oh, yeah.
And
that's the thing about the start fresh thing. Like, you believe that, though. At least I did. You know, I remember getting on the plane in Florida to go to Minnesota, and I ended up in Minnesota for 4 years. But I so vividly remember saying to myself, nobody knows me up there. Mm-hmm. I can become this brand new person with this clean slate, and like I believed it.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Yeah.
And then I get there and I'm the same damn person. Mm-hmm. You know, I thought that what mattered was the way that everybody else looked at me.
Yep.
Right. So you end up in Seattle, and then that obviously doesn't go as planned. You end up in Nashville, and then you go to treatment September 20.
Well, yeah, I went to treatment I think it might have been September of like 15. I did 45 days there. Again, this whole time I had this reservation that I was at least going to smoke or drink.
Yeah.
But I still
smoke pot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they somehow finagled me into going into a sober living.
In Nashville.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did that for a little bit. I even like went as far as getting a sponsor, started working steps, but like very half-assed.
Yep.
Was going to meetings, but like only mixed meetings. I was like,
yeah, why would I go to all men's?
Yeah, I was thinking that I was going to try to find, you know, I've always had an issue with like that kind of stuff with girls and stuff like that, like chasing just external things. And so I just wasn't really doing the deal at all. And then I found out my halfway house manager was getting high. And then, you know, I left halfway and started getting high immediately. And it was like a slow burn. I was like just smoking and drinking. But then, you know, took Xanax. And as soon as I took Xanax, it was like all bets were off and it wasn't long.
So when did you get clean? When was...
So that was So I was in treatment October of 15, did that for a few months, started using again probably January, February of 16, ran in Nashville real bad until September. And it was terrible. It was terrible how it shook out. So my dad, he came and visited me when I was still doing halfway decent, like early 2016. And I didn't see him for a while. And then he was going to surprise me for my birthday, which is September 10th. And he brought my little brother with him, and they show up, and I'm like 30 pounds less than I was the last time he saw me. It's still warm outside, but I'm wearing like long sleeves to cover my tracks. And I stayed in a hotel with him, and they like checked my backpack, and it was just filled with syringes and like using materials.
Oh God.
And he knew, so at that point he knew, that was September, like the week of September 10th. So he knew at that point, and he was getting ready to leave, and he was like, I feel like this is the last time I'm going to see you. He's like, what do you want me to do? I'll get you in somewhere. And at that point, I was still like in that mode. I was like, no, I'm going to get it figured out. I'm going to use a little bit more, but I'm going to taper down. I'll get some Suboxone and like taper down. I always had these like grand plans.
Yeah.
But, I didn't last 2 weeks before I was in that basement of that house. And my uncle came to the rescue.
And then he got you the scholarship in Nashville. How'd you end up down here now?
So, I went to Detox in Nashville again, and the original plan was for me to actually go back to a sober living in Nashville. But a day before I got discharged, he came in with my case manager and said, we think that you've kind of done enough damage here in Nashville. We pulled some strings for you, and we're going to send you down to South Florida.
Okay.
And they got me a scholarship to sober living in IOP.
Down here?
Yeah.
Wow. So he must have known somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd actually tried to get sober down here years prior, and then, ended up getting sober, working in the industry and making a bunch of connections, so he was able to leverage some of those connections and get me dialed in.
Do I know him? You don't have to say his name.
His name's Tyson Stark.
No. Do you?
No, I don't believe I know who that is.
Saved my life. Fucking legend.
Yeah, I was just going to say, knowing what we know, working obviously in the industry now, all of us for a long time, that's a God moment there.
100%.
Because scholarships, especially, now it's one thing to scholarship somebody like...
2016 was different though.
For scholarships?
Yeah.
Why, how do you say?
Well, that's when South Florida was going through all the client brokering. They created the
No, yeah, I get that, but how's scholarships play in effect?
they were a little easier to come by then.
You think so?
Oh, 1,000%.
Okay.
Because those
Well, it's
clients.
still a godsend.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
still...
the cool part is my anniversary is actually his birthday too.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. It's
You
crazy.
still talk to him?
Yeah, I
Maybe
just
not.
saw him at Global Exchange this past week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we're very close friends, and
I should have went to that. I was gonna go, but I ended up not going.
it's tough. It's cool. It's a lot.
It is.
It's a lot.
Destiny went. Did you see Destiny?
Yep. Yeah, she's awesome. She's a very, very good ambassador and advocate for you guys. Great
good.
representative. Yeah, she's
Nice.
awesome.
I'm gonna tell her you said that. She'll like to hear that. She'll say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." She says everything in threes.
I'm gonna pay attention to that now.
She'll probably be here when we're done. All right. So when you ended up down here, you went to treatment. What was that? What was that like? Like when did you start? Like, okay, I got this.
I mean, I think that's like the interesting part of it all is I was so beat down, and I literally just tried every possible option other than like actually doing AA, and just kind of surrendering to the process.
Yeah.
And I got so fortunate because I got scholarship to IOP and sober living, so it's not like the treatment was very intensive. You know what I mean? It was like, as far as like the time,
It's like sink or
commitment.
swim type.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
as far as like the levels of care, it's on like the lower end of that.
Yeah, I mean, IOP for the listeners, that's generally going to be somebody that's got two months, 2 months of sobriety, 2 to 3 months of sobriety.
Yeah.
And you had what?
None. I mean, I was fresh out of detox, still kicking Suboxone.
Yeah.
Like pretty sick. Like it was brutal. It was terrible. I didn't sleep well for like the first 2 months I was here.
But I love hearing that though. You know why I love hearing that? Because when you hear people say, "Oh, I need to go to," I need my Suboxone, or I need this, or I need that. It's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Really.
For real.
Like,
I share that sentiment.
yeah.
Well, it's the people that go through it that end up staying sober.
Yeah.
I'll just call it what it is. Like this is the only time I've ever stayed sober. I didn't get to go to Detox. I had to gut this thing out this time. Dope sick as could be.
Yeah.
And you look back at, like, for instance, Amy, who was on the podcast coming off Suboxone, like,
You need to reach out to her.
yeah, just the people that suffer are the ones that make it.
Bro, this girl was on subs for 20 years.
Yeah, dude.
21 years, actually. She was on subs. This was the first place she came to that was abstinence based.
Damn.
She's like, she come on the podcast. She was like, I wished I would have done this years ago.
Yeah. I mean,
it's
sorry,
Ben, I cut you off.
No, it's just, I mean, dude, you gotta want it. And I think the people don't get me wrong, like, there's nothing wrong with going to detoxing. There's people that take advantage of it. A hardcore junkie like me, I had to just have literally nothing left.
Same.
Yeah.
How long were you in sober living?
6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that 6 months, so the first 2 months, you were still kicking subs, probably some post-acute withdrawal stuff going on. You were integrated into AA at that point. Had a sponsor?
I mean, I think one of the biggest blessings, like, my whole journey has been like a God thing. As soon as I landed in this amazing sober living there was Gabe, Mike, Jared, Jake. There was like 4 or 5 guys. They were already a few months into it.
Yeah.
That were happy. They had sponsors. They were attending meetings. They were getting out in the sun. They were going to the gym, and they had that sparkle. And I was just like so fucking desperate for that.
Yeah.
So I just latched onto them, did everything that they did. I got a sponsor, and just started doing the deal, like, for real.
Yeah.
I like that you brought up the word desperate, because that's kind of what I was getting at, but I didn't quite get there. Is that, like, being that you were on a scholarship, had you screwed that up, where would you have gone?
Exactly. This was the last stop for me as far as any type of help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was aware of that. And yeah, I mean, truthfully, I can't say that I came down here like desperate to get sober, but I just knew that I, like, didn't want to get high. I had the benefit of getting down here, and, like, everybody was dying at that time because, like, fentanyl had just started to come around.
Yeah.
And I was like, that doesn't even really sound appealing. And, all that stuff together, like the fear of dying, being surrounded by dudes who were doing the deal, the sunlight helped me. I would go to the beach, and, like, the ocean had, like, some form of an impact on me. And I kind of just, like, literally just took from everything that I could and just let it kind of restore me back to health at some capacity.
You were just talking about the dudes that were doing the deal, and you used the word tribe a second ago. We were talking about this before we started recording, because I think this is so important. And I think it ties back to, like, what we were talking about earlier, too, with like, the culture of being in Chicago and getting out of that. What was it about being surrounded by those guys? And when you say they were doing the deal, what do you mean? Like, what was attractive? Why'd you follow that?
So I was at that place where I was, like, incapable of laughter. Like, I was like, it was, like, very hard for me to even, like, get to, like, a happy place. I was just like this. I'd been down for so long and depressed for so long that I was just, like, stuck there. And these dudes were, like, laughing and joking and, like, light on their feet and just, like, bright-eyed and energetic. And I just, like, wanted that so bad, and then the way that they would talk about their sponsors and, like, how they looked up to them and how they enjoyed these meetings that they were going to, I was like, what other option do I have? Like, this is what I have to do.
How much sober time did these guys have?
At that time, a lot of their sobriety dates are January. So they were like 4 months ahead of me.
Okay.
They were like, in that pink cloud mode, probably like, done step 3 and, like, maybe even done, like, 4 and 5, and were feeling lighter because they'd start to rid themselves of all the crap that you put yourself through when you're in active addiction or alcoholism.
And they were a bunch of athletes too?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, all of them. Yep.
Do you still talk to all of them?
I'm very, very close with one of them. The other 2 I still see quite a bit. We all have that, like, fundamental. We spent a lot of time together the first 2 or 3 years. So, like, anytime we see each other, it's like, I know who you are. You know what I mean? Like my brothers.
They all stay clean?
Yeah.
Good.
All but one, and he's doing good. I still talk to him and his dad even. They're like, he's good people.
That I think it just, and we talk about this a lot, the power of community. A lot of times when parents and loved ones are sending their child down to us for treatment, they might have this idea that, I'm just going to use your name. Jeremy's been to treatment 6 times before. Why is this going to be any different?
Yep.
So on and so forth. And it's like, your story is a good example of the power of, you surround yourself with good people, whether you want to or not, you're going to fall in line 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And I tell that to parents. We have a community here of people that want to be here. We have a community of people here that are bought into the idea of sobriety. So if your loved one does come here and they are on the fence, they're surrounded by people that are bought in. So it's the law of attraction. Generally speaking, they're going to see what everybody's doing. They're going to see the progress that everybody's making. All those things that you talked about that you saw with these small group of 5 or 6 guys, and you said it. I was even on the fence of even if I wanted to stay clean.
Yep.
But if it wasn't, and let me ask you this, if it wasn't for those 5 guys that you originally, like your tribe of those 5 men, do you think you'd have stayed clean?
No.
Yeah.
No, because they also made it look cool. And I was just so desperate and impressionable at that point. Like if I would have entered into a sober living where dudes were like doing the wrong stuff, I would have done that too. You know what I mean? Like, I ultimately would have got high, I'm sure.
And we get this question all the time, or not even a question. It's more of a statement. Well, what's the point if he doesn't want to be clean or if she doesn't want to be clean? Don't they have to be ready if any of this is going to work? And no, not necessarily. And this is a good example. We have somebody that may or may not have been ready and probably more not,
right?
Because I'm a believer that if somebody is ready, you could put them in an environment where people are fucking off and they're still going to get clean.
Yep.
You could put them in an environment where people aren't fucking off and they're going to get clean because they're ready, But for the people that are on the fence that are very impressionable, no, they don't have to be ready, but you better damn hope that they're with people that are ready, because then they can kind of fall in line.
We gave a shout out to Josh Gamm earlier. So that quote that he brought, God, when was he on the podcast? That was like
our
5 years
ago, probably.
5 years ago, yeah. He said something on that episode that I never forgot about craving the strawberry.
Yeah.
How can you crave a strawberry if you've never tasted a strawberry? And that's what this is about that I'm hearing is like for those people on the fence, a lot of times they don't even realize that culture's there. Like, and Jeremy just said, it made it look cool. Because at the end of the day, let's call it what it is, especially today, and I don't know if this is me dating myself, but my impression of all these young kids coming in nowadays is they all want to be hood gangsters. We went through that phase where they were all setting up recording studios in a SoundCloud in their closets at the halfway.
Yeah.
Like,
oh gosh.
But that's the thing is like in their mind they think that's what's cool. Where you get a guy like Jeremy in front of them, and they're like, "Dude, this is attractive. I want to be like that." And I had a follow-up question for you too. I don't recall exactly what words you used, but you said it was a phenomenal sober living. Like, what made that great? Was it beyond just those guys, or was?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And you had mentioned that 2016 was a particularly interesting time in South Florida. There was a lot of shenanigans going on in different work industries, the treatment one included, and we had like a program that we had to follow that didn't allow us to work in call rooms. We had to go to X amount of meetings. I think it was a meeting every day, if I remember correctly. We would meet we had like a case manager there, this guy, Tom, who's actually from Indiana. So me and him like really hit it off. And they would really just like help us unpack like the uncomfortability of early recovery. Cause like inevitably, as you start to like feel again, it's not all like, I mean, yes, it's like an upward trajectory, but there's a lot of like unfamiliar, like, oh, I'm like happy again, but like I'm also get sad easy and like all that different kind of stuff. Or I worked for the first time. Like, what was that like for you? You know, we just did they did a good job of like helping us reach those little milestones and like acknowledging them. And it just like really reinforced it. So my foundation, I just felt like was very strong as a result of how they set up their sober living.
Since you brought it up, you just mentioned the happy again too, because believe it or not, and the reason I bring it up, I actually met with the sponsee last night that I read with, and we were talking about his drinking patterns. We were reading the chapter more about alcoholism, and he's like, every time I get happy, it's as if I celebrate that I'm happy and feeling again, and that's when he goes and gets high.
Right.
You know, so you got that. It can actually be in a way like a pitfall, which is why like being surrounded in such a good community. A sober living that has structure and rules, let's call it what it is. You know, it's that accountability has to be there.
Yeah.
What I want to pivot now into more of the fitness aspect of it. How has that played an effect on your sobriety? Like, when did you start? I mean, you obviously weren't a specimen of health when you came to Florida.
No, I was still down bad. I actually had to use an inhaler like the first few months I was down here.
Did you?
Yeah, because my lungs had kind of taken a beating from all the use and whatever transpired from like my overdoses and stuff.
Right.
So, but like, I think after a month at the sober living, they got you a membership, and we used to go to the zoo on Woolbright and Federal. And it wasn't too long. I mean, again, I was always involved with athletics, so I've always known how to work out and do all that kind of stuff.
Bounce back, yeah.
Yeah, and I started to bounce back, and it just made me feel real good.
Yep.
So I just, you know, it gave me something to look forward to. You know, obviously, like the progressive nature of like fitness or working out, like you constantly striving to do more or do better. There's some alignments with recovery there, and it gave me more energy, and over time it gave me some confidence, and all of that stuff kind of translated into my recovery and just how I showed up for life every day. So between that and just like working and stuff, I started to like actually feel like a freaking real person again. And then I think it was so I was working at Trader Joe's. That was my first job.
Yes, I love Trader Joe's.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was the coolest.
We have so many clients that work at Trader Joe's.
It's a great job, dude.
You look like a Trader Joe's guy.
It was awesome.
With the long hair covered in tats.
Yeah. It was perfect. But all these people so I would be like, you know, at the register backing up their groceries, and all these people kept coming through with these CrossFit Dimension shirts on, which was a CrossFit gym in Delray at the time. And they'd keep coming through. They were all cool. Some of them were super fit, and I was like, that looks cool, you know? I had done CrossFit like once or twice with my sister years before when I was still ripping and running. And I liked the kind of like the competitive nature of it.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So finally I got the courage to ask one of them. I'm like, yo, what's up with this CrossFit Dimensions? They told me where it was at. They're like, come through. And eventually I went through there and like really just like took a liking to it, and eventually got like pretty good at it, like halfway decent. And the owners of that gym, Matt and Rebecca Campbell, they're amazing people. I tell this story all the time. I feel like I've told it a million times, but after some time, they asked me if I would ever consider being a coach. And I was like petrified, but I was like, yeah, I think that would be awesome. You know, I looked up to them, you know, always at the front of the class, leading everything. I thought they were just like, you know, the pinnacle of freaking fitness. And so when they asked me, I was just like so honored and humbled, and like, you know, it was just like a big deal to me. And they helped pay for half of my certification. And I went down, took the L1,
the $1,000 t-shirt, boy. T-shirt. Everybody wanted this t-shirt, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a CrossFitter. I missed out on the t-shirt.
Sorry, go ahead.
But that, you know, so I went and did that, and I started coaching for them. And again, that like community, which we touched on earlier, was just a beautiful thing. And like CrossFit communities, like in general, typically, I mean, it's a pretty expensive monthly price point. So it usually kind of invites more of like healthy minded people that are doing well for themselves, you know, in the workplace financially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally you're surrounded by like just healthy, good people.
Yeah.
And
it's not your $10 a month Planet Fitness
It
membership.
sounds expensive, but if you look at so many of our clients, and even myself when I went into treatment, how much money did I spend on cigarettes and chew? and
yeah,
vapes and all that crap.
Yeah.
You throw that aside, and a CrossFit membership ain't all that.
No.
Yeah, but I mean, look, the reality of it is that you can't tell somebody that. Like, they don't look at their health in the same way as we do, especially how we look at it now. I'll spend as much money as I need to if it comes to my health, for the most part. But I'll also spend a lot of money on stuff that goes against my health. So, it's kind of,
Yeah, it's like
it's a balance.
You don't know what you don't know, I guess, but once you get the benefits and stuff, it's like a no-brainer.
So you got involved at CrossFit Dimensions, and it kind of just went from there, man?
Yeah, so them extending that opportunity to me, paying for my cert, allowing me to coach, just like springboarded me into just a whole nother atmosphere of like opportunity and experiences that I otherwise wouldn't have been available to me, I don't think. You're
doing MMA now, aren't you?
I just help. I help my buddy. I help Jared.
Yeah. When you say, sorry, I'm cutting you off. Go ahead. Do you have anything? What I wanted to ask was, when you say help him, what's that mean? Like he just
strength and conditioning. They have so many coaches.
Oh, you're coaching him.
I assist.
Okay. I didn't know if he's like, hey, lay on the ground and let me put you in a guillotine.
No.
Like, okay.
No, he had like a main strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
But he wasn't always available to be in Florida.
Is that Stroud?
He's a striking coach. He's the fucking man.
That dude's cool.
He's the man. Yeah.
Does he live down here too?
Yeah. He's cool.
I'll talk about after that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's good people.
Where are we going with this?
Well, no. So I did the CrossFit thing. They paid for my cert. That segued into Temperance Training, which is another fantastic nonprofit organization down here that offers free CrossFit 6 days a week. They asked me to be a coach for them. I coached for them for a while. During that time, I started working at FTX Wellness as a personal trainer, in which I would facilitate exercise for people that were in treatment. And that's when I really realized how much I enjoyed working with people in recovery. And like, I found like that's where I can make an impact, was by like just getting involved with the exercise, facilitating that. And, there's some people that can like make a significant impact, that can read the big book, forward and back, recite it forwards, backwards, or like spiritual gurus. I was able to just connect with people through the fitness piece, and it made me feel good. And I'd like to think it made them feel good. And I kind of just rode with that for a while. And then that's when I started Recovery Through Repetition, which is a nonprofit organization that I started about 5 years ago. And we still offer free fitness and yoga for people in recovery. And then to circle it back, I had this idea of, once individuals achieve a year or more of sobriety, that we would pay for them to become personal trainers or yoga instructors, essentially trying to kind of like recreate what has made my life so fulfilling, helping them pursue their passion like someone did for me, which is like obviously something that we learn in the rooms of, trying to freely give to others that was given to us, type of thing.
That's awesome. So somebody, they get introduced to CrossFit and, fitness as a whole. Once they have a year of sobriety, you guys would pay for them to become like L1 instructors, or just
we actually partnered with the Axiom Fitness Academy, and they have a 6 to 8 week in-person course that you take that preps people for the NASM CPT, which is like one of the more respectable personal training certificates that you can get.
And then that's, obviously usable in the marketplace. You can go and train people.
Yep, pretty much anywhere. And that course helps with job placement and stuff. And it's just like the perfect setup for people that want to get involved in the fitness industry, for sure.
That's awesome.
Since this is really your space, let me ask you a question for our listeners, and for myself. I'm curious. I know what experience we have here. When people start getting involved with you at a fitness level that are in recovery, how many of them would you say have no experience with any kind of fitness, or maybe minimal? How many are already were previous athletes? Is there a mix? Like, what's that look like?
It was a mix. So at its height, like my first or second year of doing recovery through repetition, on some Fridays we'd have like 110 people there.
Oh my God.
It was unbelievable. There's videos that I could show you guys later that are just, it was just like,
110?
How do you manage that?
the facility that we were at is pretty big.
Okay.
And it was hard to manage, to be honest, but it was just like such a beautiful thing that we just made it work. You know, quite often it would just be like body weight stuff because we didn't have enough equipment for everybody to use, or we'd have to share, but we would just turn the music up and get 30 minutes of work in.
Yep.
But to answer your question, you know, if there's 100 people there, there'd be a handful that are like still in like detox level of care or like residential to where they can come out at 7 p.m. on a Friday night, all the way to people with, you know, 10 plus years of sobriety that have been, you know, working on their fitness for a number of years. So, and that's what made it beautiful, because it was just like a no judgment zone. The people that had a bunch of time or experience in fitness would be helping the people that don't know what they're doing or feel like shit or do 5 push-ups and feel like they're going to throw up. You know, they would encourage them, and just like everyone kind of just rallied together, and it was just impactful.
Yeah. And I bring that up because, you know, sometimes I'll just be straight up. I kind of get the fear on the podcast that maybe some of our listeners are like, oh, Rock, they're a bunch of meatheads. But I like sharing the stories. And
I don't even work out anymore.
I've shared this a few times, you know, about we had an older lady that could barely walk out of Detox after 4 months with us. I had her doing barbell squats, and she was in her 60s.
Yep.
You know, where like it's I feel like so many people and professional institutions like so overlook the physical aspect of getting sober and the benefits, both physiologically, mentally.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so many times it's like in this box of you just need to sit in front of a therapist. And don't get me wrong, therapy is so important and absolutely vital.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to a recovery lifestyle.
Yeah. And I would, you know, and I mentioned this to the gentleman downstairs, like before I would lead these classes, we would have like a little go around and stuff and kind of set the tone and get centered. But I would tell people like, thank you for coming. I want you to know that this is a supplement to our recovery. This is not a substitute. Like there's a lot of things you need to do outside of here to keep you on the path. This is just something that if you allow it can enhance your recovery. So I never wanted to like confuse people that this is all that we do. There is other stuff that needs to be done. Like for me, it was AA, 12 steps, being of service, my connection with God, all that kind of stuff, which it can look different for anybody. I don't have any judgment how that looks for you, but the fitness component, for me at least, is a supplement to the other stuff that I do to keep me sober.
Thank you for bringing that up for real, because we, again, like, and I just like relate into what we see here. Like, you know, we are known, people know we do the physical component. So like, oh, I want my kid to go there because you guys do these workouts, and because they're already an athlete, so to speak. And once in a while we run into situations where that's all they want to do.
Yeah.
You know, like I have a young man here right now who, an athlete, like hands down, this kid came here a beast already from an athletic perspective.
Yeah.
But he trying to go to the gym twice a day. And I'm like, bro, recovery is so much more than that. And now his shoulders hurt. And I'm like, did you rest this week? No, I went to the gym 4 times. I'm like, bro, like you got to have something else. Yeah. You know, what happens if you really get injured to the point where you can't go?
Yeah.
And then you have nothing. You have to be prepared for that, you know?
Yeah, well, not only that, too, he's overtraining. Even remove the recovery aspect out of it. Like, their overtraining is a real thing. And he's doing that, you know, so.
And it's just like, and we learn this, and people don't know early on, so you can't really blame them for it. But, like, in my experience, recovery isn't like an outside job. Like, you can be the fittest person around, but the second something bad happens that reminds you of how big of a piece of crap that you are or once were, it doesn't matter how good a shape you're going to be. Your emotionals are going to take over, and you're going to end up getting high again. Yep. It's like you got to really, you know, galvanize or like work on the internal stuff, and otherwise you're smoked. That's the second something bad happens.
That's what I share to parents all the time, because a lot of times they're like, I don't understand why so-and-so can't quit. You know, he's got all of it. You know, he's got the house, he's got the kids, he's got the cars, yada, yada, yada. I said, it's not, you can't have external things fixing an internal problem. That stuff is irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
We've all been there. We've all tried to fill those voids with external things, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. And if it did, we would have all gotten sober well before we did.
Yeah, because my parents tried all that stuff. They tried to get me the nice car to make me feel better, or the nice clothes, or do all the things or whatever, and it didn't matter.
Or the move to Arizona.
Right.
You know, that's an external solution.
100%.
You know, hey, let me just pick up and move to Arizona. You know, hang out with the scorpions and cactuses for a while. Oh, that ain't going to work. So let me go up to Seattle and just hang out in the rain for a while. Nope, that ain't going to work. I'll go back to Chicago, hang out in the blistering cold weather.
Yeah.
That didn't work either. It's when... Honestly, and it's so cool that this happened. Like, you get surrounding yourself with the people, because, and we'll end with this because we got to wrap up. The people that you went to Arizona with, they weren't looking for sobriety.
No.
When you went to Seattle, the people you were with weren't looking for sobriety. Back home, wasn't until you came down here, you got yourself with 5 or 6 dudes that were doing the deal. They were on the path. They were looking for sobrieties when you fell in line.
Yep.
And you weren't ready for it. Just so happened that was in God's plan for you.
Yep.
You know, and I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot. No is an okay answer. Let me throw that out there. I'm like, timing wise, I'm like, dude, I got to set up the gym. Are you busy after this?
No.
Dude, you want to help me run a workout downstairs
Absolutely.
after?
That'd be an
Look at that.
honor and a privilege.
Look
to
at that. Hey, we should have him do some of our, if you're open. Well, we could talk after. Audience doesn't need to hear this stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be cool. They're tired of me, dude. And I'm not like certified. I used to be a personal trainer, but that's one-on-one. Like, sounds like you really know what you're doing with the group stuff. So.
I would like to think so, but I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be cool. I wonder if we should get it on video. Some of it on whatever.
Jump in the workout, Tom.
Ben, no way. Any final thoughts?
No, it's you know, man, I like sitting here with guys like Jeremy. You know, so much of the time I talk about, like, it's the emotional, spiritual stuff you relate to, and that so many times the details don't matter, but there's so much of what he said that's like identical to my story, dude. And it's just, but that ties back to, again, like, finding your tribe, someone that, like, he speaks my language. When he's talking about this shit, I know, I'm like, oh, I feel that. I know what it's like when the DEA rolls up on you. I'm like, I feel that. I know what it's like to be in a basement, you know, dying, shooting coke and dope. And it's like, you feel it, dude, in your bones, you know, and in your soul. And it's like, and to look at him now and where he's at, as cliche as it sounds, it's like, that's a dude I'd want to be like. I say it all the time. You know, you meet a guy like Jeremy and you're like, he's cool.
Right.
And to know that the way that he speaks, he's not lying about where he was, because I've been there.
Well, and now, Jeremy, you are those 5 guys that you originally met when you first came down.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah. That's the coolest part about all of it. And
that
wouldn't have made sense to me back in my 20s and stuff like that. But like, I think you guys know from your own experience, like, being of service to other people and, like, having this unique qualification as a result of our really crappy experiences, now being able to help other people, it's just like the most beautiful thing. You know, and it's just like a gift.
Yeah, sure is. All right, well, that's a wrap, boys. Good?
Sweet.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you guys.
All right, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, it's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.